Hi, Susan. Lovely to have you on the Mind Talk podcast. And I'm excited to hear about your journey, what you do, and tell us a little something about yourself.
Thanks, Rochelle. It's really lovely to be here. Very exciting. Um, a little bit about myself. I mean, I'm originally from Glasgow, now living in Hong Kong. Like yourself, spent 20 odd years in the Middle East and moved here with my older teenagers last year for my husband's job.
Mhm.
Like you, I like to create safe spaces for women where we can just have like great conversations, inspire each other, understand each other, feel seen, feel heard. So yeah, I love the work that you do, and it very much aligns with some of the work that I do as well.
Thank you so much. And I think women really need that because I have come to see this that as women, we believe that we women support each other and women are women's friends, but that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. So, what do you see as a safe space, and what got you to create those safe spaces?
Well, I think like it's really interesting what you say there about women supporting women because I think unfortunately not everyone really understands what women supporting women means.
Mm,
Um, it's not cheering in the good times. It's not sending a two-word WhatsApp that's completely disingenuous, but it ticks the box like, oh, I've checked in on Sue, she's fine. Um, what does real support look like? And I think one of the things that probably, from my experience, was that I was unable as a person back
mhm,
in my former self to ask anyone for help.
mm.
Like I just couldn't ask for help. I couldn't admit that I wasn't coping. I couldn't admit that things weren't where they should be. I couldn't admit, and a lot of that was on me, but also where was the opportunity to say that? Like everyone looks at your perfect life. There's a lot of judgment, from the outside. They're like, what, how could she be unhappy? How could she be? So I felt like there just wasn't that space for me that I could find where I could sit with like-minded women and just completely be myself and be authentic and say, I don't know what I'm doing with this, or this is really hard, or my life's not what I thought it would be, or my life is not what my Instagram looks like, so I thought it was really important that you can give people those signposts and those pathways to meet like-minded people, to meet people who have been through what you've been through, because whilst I think, even if my a lot of my experience comes from my divorce and single parenting, so a lot of that's where my inspiration comes from. And whilst every divorce is completely different, there's lots of similarities that people can meet and discuss and come together on them because, like I said, like the superficial support is not what people need. People need real support. And that's really what I believe.
So you said at the beginning that you found it really difficult to ask for support, and I see a lot of women go through that. So what is it about women not asking for support, and what was your experience of going through that, and what have you seen?
I think some of it starts from childhood where we're just expected to do certain things. There's society that impacts it as well. And then the normalization of the emotional load. So the expectation is that you'll just get on with it. It's fine. Like we'll just keep making dinners every night, wondering what people are going to eat. We are natural providers, we are natural carers. So especially like if there's children in the environment, you're just getting on with things. You are making sure that everyone's safe and the last person, it's everybody before self, right? Like it's everybody before you. So I think um there's a bit of conditioning there that you just have to battle through it. um, I personally, I mean, my husband never really worked, so I had kind of the emotional load and the financial load. And I think sometimes you feel like I certainly felt, I'll talk from my personal opinion, my personal experience. I personally felt like I had no choice. And I think it's not until one day that there's a light, well, for me, there was a light bulb moment, and I was like, oh, I do have a choice here, and I need to make good choices. And I also think, you know, sometimes there's shame or embarrassment or guilt about admitting that things are not the way they should be. I mean, everyone talks about a failed marriage,
Mm.
and it's like it's not a failure. Like, you know, I doubt there's many women or men out there who haven't worked hard to try and save that marriage. And I think there's certain phrases in life that we should probably get rid of, and failed marriage would be one of them. I think people definitely, on the whole, want to save their marriage. I don't think anyone gets married thinking that they're going to get divorced. I was with my ex-husband from when I was 18 years old. The 38-year-old version of me was quite different to the 18-year-old version of me, as was he.
Mm.
So, but I think that asking for help was very difficult for me. And I was very, very lucky that that system opened up for me straight away, because I was in a situation where my friends were literally like, why did it take you so long? Like, we never wanted to say anything, but we could see the strain, we could see. And you're like, I thought I was doing a great job at pretending. So I think, yeah, I think some of it's conditioning, some of it's societal, some of it's stuff we put on ourselves, some of it's just pride, and some of it depends on our personality as well. So, yeah, I think you just learn, like, and then, you realize that perhaps that's not the right life for you.
Mm. And when someone moves out of a marriage, and if you have children, the one thing that moms hear a lot is, you know, a single parent home is not good for the children. There's research around there. And I love how people nitpick research to show women and make them feel guilty around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can find research and manipulate it in any way you want to. You can find research for anything, right? That backs up your story, your narrative, whatever you want to do that, right? I think that's people will create their narrative. You'll always be the villain in their story,
Mm.
and acceptance of that is important.
On your profile on LinkedIn, I saw that you work as a divorce coach supporting women going through divorce. What does that look like? What kind of clients do you work with?
I work with a lot of different women, and I do tend to work more in the divorce space than anywhere else, purely because of my own experiences as well. And I've worked in HR for many years, qualified coach as well. And like, women come to me for many, many different reasons.
Mm.
Um, I spend quite a bit of time with women who are not quite there yet on their journey, who
Mm.
are, I think I need to leave my husband. So I do spend quite a lot of time in that space. And then I spend a lot of time in the kind of aftermath space, I would say. So I think when you're actually going through the divorce, the focus tends to be on children, finances, getting through the day. Like, so the rebuilding doesn't tend to take place there. So I would say I work with people who are pre-divorce, if that's even a thing. Um, and I definitely try not to encourage people to leave, because I feel like before I was a coach, like when I left my husband, I did have a lot of women who would then come into my life, maybe for the gossip, but to tell me about their situation and to try and justify them leaving their husband because they want somebody else to say it out loud, right? So I try not to do that. Coaching is very much about drawing things out from your client, from the women that I work with, and getting them to think about their perspective. It's not therapy, it's not sharing my perspective, it's their situation, their perspective. What have they tried? Who's their circle? What do they see their life like? Um, where are the moments where they're happiest? Like, what does that look like? And then I work with people who are kind of through the process of the pain more than anything. There's always pain, but they're at the stage where they want to build themselves up again, I guess, rise, be different, have the courage, the confidence to own their life. Like, certainly worked with many, many women who were stay-at-home mums.
Mm.
And that's a whole um, different game, right? Than I think, if you've been working and you split up, you've already got a foundation where you probably got a job, you feel like, okay, well, financially it's going to be a stretch, but I've got this and I can do this. And I think for women who perhaps have not worked, like that is really starting again. So how do I talk about my skills? How do I talk about myself? Where do I start? What and really building up confidence there. So I would say that's probably how it's split. So I probably before and after. I always say like you might not have written the title, but you do get to write the next chapter. So where you go from here is completely up to you. You've got all the tools at your disposal, even if people think they're not capable of X, Y, Z at that moment in time. Like there's nothing that you can't achieve, right? And I think that comes back to what we spoke about before, where people think they don't have a choice.
Mm.
I think it's helping them to see like there's always a choice. If you choose to stay, great, but work on yourself, do things that, you know, will make your situation better, make you happier. You don't have to stay in that hell of, oh my God, whose life am I living? Where do I go from here? You need to find your peace in that relationship if you stay. But
Mm.
if you leave, like, what does that look like? I think of all the women I've worked with, um, and I did do some research on this as well, which shows like women want to interact with like-minded women. They want to talk to people who they feel understands them, even if they've not been in their exact situation. Like they have the empathy there, they have a real good understanding. They do not judge, because I think, I mean, I'm sure if I was to ask you how many times you've been judged on many aspects of your life, like the judginess is like there's a lot of judgment um, on your decisions, and actually your decisions are your decisions, and people should respect them, hold you up, and move on like that. But life's not always like that, right?
Lately, I've started to think that this stay-at-home mom and the glorification of that is actually doing a lot of disservice to women. And you might think completely differently on this topic. So, what are your views about it?
Yeah, I think like I mean, I have a strong view on it because my personal view is you need a form of financial independence so that you do have choices in life. And like for me, working lights me up, like meeting people, developing myself, like that's who I am as a person. And it's not for everyone. And maybe people want to be more present with their children or want to do things like that. But I think however you set up, and if you set up that you are a stay-at-home mum, you should have some financial arrangement with that you get paid monthly or you have like a financial split so that if anything ever happens, because things do happen, whether it's divorce, illness of your husband, redundancy, like stuff happens. Every woman should have their own bank account.
Yes.
They should have their fuck it fund, as I call it, which is your little reserve for, when life throws stuff at you that, the plot twist you didn't see coming. Um, and I think, like, for me, it's very important that I role model that not for my daughter as much as for my son,
Ah,
so
okay.
that he
Tell me more about
understands, right? I don't want him to see women as the stay at home, the dependent, the cooking the dinner, doing the dishes, like so that he can respect women and treat them in the way that is appropriate. So
it.
I think like it's as much for my daughter as it is for my son that that role modeling is super important, that we make good choices and we show the next generation of men also like what that looks like and how they should behave, how they should respect, how they should, you know, be 50-50, like bring it into the relationship and have a partnership and not think that, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, I'm a mum and I still run about after him like a crazy mum. But I think on the big stuff, I think there's some really good role modeling. And yeah, I think it's just definitely good for people. Like have something that keeps you in touch with other people. It doesn't need to be high flying jobs, but do something. Volunteer, like keep yourself in a situation where you are exposed to other people, you're exposed to opportunities, you are developing your skills, you like, I think that's really like super important.
There are a lot of, I think there are a majority of the times the mom will do everything for others and
Yeah.
she comes last.
Yeah.
And sometimes the way she finds time for herself is maybe going shopping or, you know, going to get her nails done or something like that, but it doesn't really carry as much value as investing your own money, learning how to invest, learning how to save money, having that discipline of I'm going to go and work and earn money, even on days when I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Because I'm very comfortable. My husband earns a lot, but that is my way of staying relevant, knowing what it takes in the outside world.
Yeah. I think what hits hard is especially on the days that you don't want to.
Mm.
When you said that, I was like, yeah, that is what it is. That's lifing, isn't it? It's like doing the stuff that, like when your kids get up and they're like, or my daughter regularly on a Sunday night, oh, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. I mean, okay, well, don't go to school. Like, imagine saying that to your kid. Like, you'd be like, absolutely not. You're going to school. Like, get on the bus, get going. Like, this is lifing. And I think that discipline is really important because you need to face the hard things and not run away from them and not just think like, I mean, metaphorically, it's almost like taking a nap in your own life, right? Like it's, and do I feel like I've been any less present with my kids? Probably,
Mm.
probably. Has that impacted them? Probably at times. But did I still show up for them? Did I appear at the rugby match 10 minutes late because I'd been in a meeting? Yeah. Was I judged by the other mums at rugby? Yep.
Probably.
Like, did it matter? Like, did they know that I showed up for them? Absolutely. Will they remember that I was there or will they remember that I was 10 minutes late? They'll
Mm.
remember that I was there, right? You know, interestingly, COVID. So when COVID hit, my job at that time, I worked 7 till 3:30. And
Mm.
it wasn't until COVID that I realized I'd never had breakfast with my kids
Mm.
in the week because I'd be gone to work before they were even up for school. Um, and that hit hard. And I was like, oh, I'm going to make some changes here. And fortunately, work then brought in some flexible hours and eventually I changed jobs because I was like, this is not the right place for me. But it is those small things. And you're like, oh, I kind of regret that. Like, let's be honest, we all have some regrets. But, sometimes that's just the way life is. And there's no long-term harm in it. But I think like the good thing that does come from it is the discipline. Like it's showing up when you really don't want to, right? Because that's what life's all about. Whether you're, rebuilding from a marriage, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, like you've got to show up, right? You've got to get on with it. And, you know, life's too short. Like it really is. Like all the cliches, unfortunately, most of them are true, but you've got one life, like, and nobody's, regretting the the small things in life, right? So how am I going to live my life to make sure that I do that justice?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
you've got this beautiful gift of life. Got
Use
to
it.
get on with it.
And something that you said, right? Like, am I going to be 10 minutes late to the to practice? Probably you are. So this entire notion that I have to be this perfect woman with 1,000 hands, it's just crazy. And the amount of pressure it puts on women. What are we really telling ourselves? What message are we giving ourselves?
The wrong one. Because life's messy though, right? Like life gets in the way. I think anyone that's telling you they've got a perfect life is likely a liar. And I think like that honesty is so much more important to be honest and say, do you know what? I haven't got this figured out. Or, to call up your friend and be like, Rishi, I can't make it. Can you please pick my son up from rugby? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with saying, I have not got this all figured out. Um, and I think it's really dangerous to set ourselves up in a place where we let people think we've got it all figured out. Because, if with kids, with husbands, with friends, like if you're always the one that's picking stuff up, then people, some will take advantage, but some unintentionally will just be like, you know, I see my son this last 10 days, he just had surgery, so he snapped his ACL. So
Oh,
he's on crutches. And he just laughs at the amount of stuff he asked me to do for him. But he knows that he's overstepping the mark, right? He's being funny with it and he still wants me to run about after him. But he knows where the boundary is. He knows where the line is, right? So he knows that he can push it because he's on crutches, but he knows when he's off those crutches, that won't happen. And not that I'm cruel. I mean, I do plenty for them, but I think it's making sure that people understand boundaries and having that respect for yourself and saying, do you know what? Like, do I really need to do this? I think I wrote about this on LinkedIn, like me being the CEO of my house, right? I'm 100% the CEO of my life, of our lives. Deep down, I love it though, right? And what parts am I going to give up?
hmm.
Because we also don't want to give parts up because we also think it won't get done as well as I would do it because we have that perfectionist. Well, so what? Like, if we need to go, if we decide we're going to Australia for Christmas, for example, why do I need to book the flights? Like, my husband is just as capable, but I would be like, oh no, I'll do it because I know everyone's schedule in my head and I know. Why could I not just say to him, these are the rough dates, like, go away and do it because I actually want to control it. I want to decide when we go. I want to decide where we stay. I want to. So there is a lot of it that we put on ourselves. And I do think, like, yeah, I mean, I'll admit to being a bit of a control freak, but conditioned, I think I said like in my first marriage, like I did have to do everything. Like that was just the role that I had. And now I'm remarried,
Hmm.
but I'm in a partnership. And often my husband will say to me, well, I could do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you could.
You could do that. Yeah, good.
And,
Good
and he
for you.
does, and
Yeah.
he's happy to. But it's just like I don't ask, or I bury myself until it's boiling over. It's really dangerous to try and be all things to all people and think that at some point that house of cards is not going to fall down. Whether it's not because necessarily you end in divorce, but it could be your mental health. It can be, I've seen and worked with a number of women who are empty nesters
Mm.
and who've been stay-at-home mums, and that is a very, very difficult transition. Like that is complete loss of purpose. And that is like one of the worst things that can happen to you, right? Because whilst you're working and you've still got a purpose, you have to go to work in the morning, you have to do this, you're paying bills, you're doing whatever you're doing. But that, like, once the kids are gone, I think that complete loss of purpose is very, very difficult.
But what I really want to come back to is you've worked with a lot of women, and I do want to focus on women going through a divorce, right? Uh, what are some of the things women feel when they decide to walk out, like leave the marriage, end the marriage? Or what are some of the things you've seen women feel who stay in the marriage but are not really happy?
I think there's so many different situations. So obviously there's women who are left, and they're generally blindsided,
Mm.
and left. if you talk about, and that in itself is a whole loss of your life, what you thought your life was going to be. You're building something like, and that is shock. I mean, people are in shock for quite some time. Um, Women who leave, I think, I think women leave quietly over periods of years.
Mm,
So I very rarely met a woman who made a snap decision. I think men get their heads turned sometimes, or different motivations, but I've rarely met any woman who left on a whim or just decided they were going to leave. They generally have been unhappy for 5 years, 10 years, since the very day they got married, or um and we have that perfection and the shame, the guilt. So we've got to make it work. So, well, we're just married. So, it's not always going to be like this. It will get better. Then kids come into the equation, and it's like, well, now we've got kids. There's definitely different different ways, but generally, I think women are quietly quitting for years.
mm,
And I think often their husbands are blindsided because they think you'll never leave. They might know that you're unhappy. They might know that things aren't great. They might know that their behavior is impacting you. They might know all of these things, but a lot of men don't think you've got the strength, or that you would say, do you know what, enough.
mm,
So I think then they're in a state of shock because you've actually put your foot down. And I think a lot of what happens in the divorce process that I've seen is that people are not emotionally in the same place.
mm,
So either the wife's blindsided or the husband's blindsided, and for different reasons. And therefore, like when I left my husband, I had probably been building up to it since my wedding day. So for 10 years, I just didn't know it.
mm,
Um, I nearly didn't get married. So I obviously knew something at that time. But I think probably it was probably about 3 years of I'm not sure I can do this anymore.
mm,
And the grieving of it and the upset and okay, well, what's my life going to look like? The planning, so you've done all that. And by the time I told my ex-husband, like, I need a break from this, this is not working, he was like floored, right? So then he's just at the start of his emotional journey. I'm several years into mine.
yeah.
So then people judge you because they're like, well, why are you not devastated? He's over there devastated.
Mm,
He's like, you know, this, that, and the next thing. I think it's always that people are at different stages in the
mm,
divorce process that causes the friction. I
mm,
think it's very unusual for two people to come together at the same time and say, this isn't working.
mm,
It's usually initiated by one or the other parties. So I think I see a lot of women who are, yeah, just shattered. Everything they thought was their life is no longer their life. They're looking at, how am I going to cope? Where am I going to go? Obviously, a lot of the women I work with are expat women. They're not in their home country. So what does that look like? Um, I don't know enough about Hong Kong and the rules here, but certainly in the Middle East, that is your visa generally is with your husband, or your life is dependent on that family unit quite often. So really, it is, what on earth am I going to do? What does that look like? So I think women leave because they've had enough. I think men will stay in an unhappy marriage a lot longer than women will.
mm,
They'll be worn down, and men just kind of shrug their shoulders, accept it, and go and play golf, perhaps. I don't know. I'm not a man, but I think it's different uh, for women, and I think they leave to find peace. Whereas I think research shows,
mm,
here's our research, but men often only leave when there's someone else, right? They
mm,
they leave to be with someone else rather than women who tend to leave to find their peace.
Yeah.
Like I think like that is they realize that they have a choice and they want to make that choice for themselves and for their kids or their family or whatever it is.
And I think when women leave, the one thing that they can find strength in, because is through connection.
Yeah.
So for those listening to this podcast, you might not like the idea of divorce and separation culturally, individually, your conditioning is not there. But how can you support another woman, even when you think that she has done the biggest mistake of her life by choosing separation or divorce?
But this is what you are when you're a friend. Like you support the good choices, the bad choices, the in-between choices, like think about when you're kids and you don't like your friend's boyfriend or you think she's making bad choices or her skirt's a bit short or whatever. Like we support each other. We don't feel the need to judge. And at what point in our lives do we find that place of judgment? Like your decisions are your decisions. Like if you decide to stay in a marriage, I've also met or have friends who are in unhappy marriages who choose to stay. That's their own decision. Like they stay for the kids, or they stay because it suits them financially, or they stay because they're not that unhappy. Like they're just, it's not a marriage, but they got on fine and they feel like that's okay for them, that's enough for them. And you have to respect people's choices in life because you're not living in their shoes, right? Like you are not you know, y and you might not agree with it or you might not understand it, but who are you to judge, right? You are there to support. You are there to say, do you know what? Whatever you decide, I'm good with it, and I'll be here for you. Um, and I think truly being there for somebody is not sending a WhatsApp. Like it's making sure you're present. It's making sure you are visible. It's making sure the other person is included. It can be very lonely because generally people who are in a marriage live generally in a couple's world.
Mm.
So then one is maybe not invited. Some friends will be your friends, some will be his friends, some will be mutual friends. And then, so there is a little bit of, and how do you navigate that? Not bad mouthing the ex probably is a good place to start. People will naturally gravitate, and that's okay. And I think it's like you need to have an acceptance of that, that everyone won't rally around you, right? Like people will side with the other part, whatever. It doesn't matter. You need to find your people that will support you. But I think if you are a friend or you are somebody in a circle with a woman who is struggling through anything, whether, like we've got the big menopause piece now, we've got, we're people who are losing parents, we've got women who want to change their careers, we've got people going back to work, we've got redundancy, we've got so many things that impact us, of course, divorce. But if you truly want to be supportive, like be there, be in their corner, work out what that looks like, whether that's a weekly glass of wine, a weekly call, uh, you know, inviting you and the kids to whatever it is, or, just think about what that person really needs. Is it making them dinner and bringing it round in a casserole dish? Because sometimes, sometimes we need that.
Mm.
Um, what is it that I can do to help you? What's thoughtful? Walking past the shop, seeing something that, oh, I know, like, Rishi really loves those biscuits. I'm going to pick some up and drop them off to her house. Or I'm going to send her flowers so that she knows that I'm thinking about her. Or, what are the ways that you can really be present? It doesn't need to be big gestures. It can be, I often think like the small things are, and just giving people the opportunity to, it doesn't need to be like, Rishi, let's go and have a glass of wine and I'll dissect you and make it better. Let's just go and have a glass of wine. Let's just talk about, oh, I was going to say the news, but that's even more depressing than divorce probably.
Don't
But
talk about anything. Just sit there with your glass
anything.
of wine and let
That's it.
let your friend be.
And I think if you're the friend, don't always ask them because people will talk when they want to talk. They'll find a way to talk to you. I think just let them be in the mundane garbage of let's just talk about how nice the wine is, what we're having to eat, what we're doing at Christmas time, what, the weather's like, what, you know, Sophie's doing, with her new business, or like, all the different things in life that you spoke about before you were divorced. Like before you had divorce, you had a friendship, you had good times, you had fun
Yeah.
together. So remember those times. Like a divorce doesn't define somebody's 24/7, and they want a break from thinking about divorce and other stuff. Maybe they do want to talk, but make sure they know they can talk when they want to, but also like help them be and feel like themselves and what that life looks like. So I think like really showing up and being present is what true friends do. Like there's no judgment and it's fine. Like when I was probably in my darkest place, I have a really best friend in Glasgow who, I mean, I haven't lived in Glasgow for 25 years or so, but we're still very, very close. She messaged me every day at the same time, just to check in and say, wave. Like she didn't, we didn't have a big call. She wasn't like, how's your day? My
Mm.
brother used to call me every day to ask me if I'd cried because I cried for months.
Yeah.
And he used to just say, did you cry today? And eventually I didn't cry every day, right? Because it's, and I left my husband, and people might be like, oh, what are you doing crying about it? Because it's emotional.
Yes.
Then, you go through not just the emotion of the divorce. And yes, like I said, I was emotionally kind of accepting of it, but you're not emotionally prepared for the stuff that gets thrown at you, the slander, the narratives, the stuff about kids, like the actual divorce process itself. So yeah, I have, and my brother lived in Australia, so it's not even, but every day he would just be like, did you cry today? And those are the little things that are like, help you identify your progress as well. Because eventually I was like, no, mate, I didn't actually cry today. And he'd be like, brilliant. Next
Mm.
day, probably cried. But eventually you're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
crying less.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see that I'm crying less. Like I am healing. And,
Mm.
I think these are really important. And showing up for somebody is one of the kindest, most purposeful things you can ever do, because you will, unless you're in that situation, you'll never quite appreciate what it means to somebody.
Mm.
And we will all go through these. We will not all get divorced, but we will all lose a parent. We will all, go through some hardship in life, an illness, whatever it is, a breakup, whatever that is. At some point in your life, you're going to need those people, and you owe it to them. Like, you only get back what you put out, right? And I think it's really important. So yeah, be a good friend always. And people will open up to you or not.
Mm.
Like I have a really close friend going through a separation at the moment, and I know she doesn't want to talk about it. And I know when she does want to talk about it, she'll call me
Mm.
because we're friends. She knows, and every so often I will remind her and say, like, there's no judgment here. So if you ever want to talk or just shout at me, call me. And
Mm.
she will, but she'll do it on her terms. She doesn't need to do it on my terms. Why do I need to know? I just need to know that she's alive and she's coping and she's doing it in her own way, right? There'll
Mm.
be other people who need to talk about it constantly,
And
you know,
that's okay too.
and that absolutely it's different for everybody, and you've got to go with what people feel comfortable with. And as a friend, it's probably your job to deal with your discomfort because that's your discomfort. It's not theirs. Like that's on you. And you need to think, well, it's all okay, my friend's going through this. I'm going to feel a little bit uncomfortable and awkward if we just go and sit in silence for a while. But that's like, get over it because it's not going to impact you. Whereas for your friend, it could be like the thing that got them through the week,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know?
And most importantly, don't ask, how did it happen? What really happened? Stay away from those questions
Yeah.
because the- taking a decision to separate or get a divorce is so complicated. There is never one single answer. And we want to villainify someone find a villain in the whole story. And sometimes nobody is the villain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the actually I find that women who break up when there's not been a villain tend to rebuild quicker
Mm,
rather than like when there's been an affair or, because in that circumstance, there is a villain. Quite clearly, there's a villain, but not just a villain in the marriage. It gives everybody something to gossip about, and it gives everybody like, oh, he had an affair. Why did he have an affair? Oh my goodness, she's this, and then they're digging around trying to find out who she is, stalking the person. Like it's so distracting from the actual pain of what's going on, um, that often when there is a villain, I find that people find it more difficult to heal because there's so much noise going on around. And if you're just leaving because it didn't work out or because there was no partnership in the relationship or somebody didn't, outgrew somebody or whatever that reason is, you give less ammunition for gossip.
and as women allies, what we can do is just be there, create space for them, and really not expect anything. It's not their job to, be there for you. It's our job to be there for them.
Yep. Yep. And I think like that's the big reminder here. Like it's never a light decision.
Mm,
Like from any party, I don't think it's ever a light decision. I think it's always a heavy decision. Everybody knows the impact. Everybody, even if people are, it's an easy decision to leave the other person. It's never an easy decision because you think about how will my parents feel, how will the kids feel. Like everyone knows that there's an impact of these decisions. So nobody does it lightly. So you've got to be kind to these people and you've got to like show some respect that this was the best option for them and you need to support that because it doesn't impact your life. Like if I get divorced, it impacts my life, my kids' life, maybe my parents, but it doesn't change anything for my friends. Does it make things awkward occasionally? Maybe, but
probably. Yeah.
it shouldn't change anything. I'm still me. My
Mm,
ex-husband's still my ex-husband. If you want to speak to him, great. If you want to be my friend, great. If you don't, then you probably were never my person. But, I think it's very important to surround yourself and find that circle of people that will stand beside you.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan. It was such a lovely podcast. It was lovely talking to you. It's always unfiltered, it's direct, and it's things that are said as they are. And it's important to have such conversations a lot more rather than, just putting women up and cheering them on with no real substance.
Yeah,
Have that work towards upskilling, work towards staying relevant and having understanding of your finances. Be a good friend to women around you.
yeah,
That's
yeah. I think that is the most important. Like we should, yeah, women supporting women, like actually supporting women is 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 how it should be. Like men support men all the time,
oh yeah.
all the time, all the time.
Mm.
Like it's just second nature to them, and I hope at some point it will be second nature to women. And like I really enjoyed our conversation together today. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. And as I always say, an empowered woman empowers the household. Thank you so much, Susan.
Lovely. Thank you.